The airport hummed with the early morning rush, its dim lights casting long shadows across the bustling terminal. Announcements crackled through the speakers, blending with the hurried footsteps of travelers dragging their suitcases behind them. Outside, massive aircraft sat silently on the tarmac, waiting for their turn to take flight. Captain Olivia Carter strode through the crew corridor, her head held high, every step exuding the quiet confidence of a pilot who had logged over 15,000 flight hours. Today was monumental. Her first official day as captain at Regal Airlines, one of the largest carriers in the United States. She had spent years proving herself, pushing past every barrier to stand in a position few black women in aviation had ever reached. But the moment she stepped into the briefing room, the energy shifted. Conversations hushed. Eyes flicked toward her, then quickly turned away. The tension in the air was undeniable. Thomas Reynolds, the CEO, rose from his seat, his voice steady and firm. "Captain Carter, we need you to wait outside." The words hit like a sharp, icy blade. Olivia froze, gripping the handle of her pilot case. She had been ready to take command. Instead, she was being pushed aside, without warning, without explanation. Why? Was this just a minor change, or a sign of something far bigger? And once she stepped outside that door, would she even be allowed back in? Olivia stood just outside the briefing room, forcing herself to steady her breath. She had seen this before. The doubt, the subtle dismissals, the quiet questions about whether a black woman could truly be a captain. She had fought against it her entire career. She squared her shoulders, inhaled deeply, and stepped away from the door. She needed answers. A few minutes later, Reynolds reappeared, his expression unreadable. "We've made some changes," he stated coolly. "Captain Howard Blake will be taking Flight 207 today. You'll be reassigned to Flight 422 to Seattle to get acclimated with the company's procedures." The words stung like a slap. Olivia had prepared for this flight for weeks, studying the route, the weather patterns. There was no justifiable reason for this last-minute reassignment. "With all due respect," she said, keeping her voice as measured as possible, "I was assigned to Captain Flight 207. I have the experience. I'm more than capable. Is there a specific reason for this change?" Reynolds exchanged a glance with Richard Whitmore, a senior captain standing nearby. "San Francisco is a complex approach," Reynolds finally said, his tone careful. "We want to ensure a smooth operation." Olivia tightened her grip on her bag. She understood the real meaning behind their words. They didn't trust her. "And what about Flight 422? She asked. "Captain Harold Blake will be your supervising officer," Reynolds replied, "a highly experienced captain." The name hit Olivia like a weight sinking in her stomach. Harold Blake was one of Regal Airlines' senior pilots, but he was also known for his staunch, old-school mentality. There had been plenty of murmurs about his open opposition to change in the industry, especially when it came to diversity and inclusion. She could refuse, but that would only give them more reason to push her aside. So instead, she nodded. "Very well, I'll get familiar with the procedures." Reynolds offered a forced smile. "Good, I'll be looking forward to hearing how it goes." With no other choice, Olivia left the office and headed straight to the gate. She wouldn't let anyone crush her dreams. If they wanted to test her, she would show them exactly how wrong they were about her. The Boeing 737 for Flight 422 to Seattle was parked at the gate, engines humming softly. Olivia stepped into the cockpit, where Harold Blake was already seated, reviewing the flight paperwork. He didn't even look up when she entered. "Sit down," he muttered, flipping through the documents. "I know who you are, Captain Carter. They told me I need to train you, but I don't have time to teach the basics." Olivia remained composed, setting her bag down as she methodically checked the control panel. "I've logged over 15,000 flight hours, Captain Blake. I don't need anyone to teach me the basics." Blake let out a dry chuckle and finally turned to look at her. "Then don't disappoint me." Olivia didn't respond. She stayed focused on her task, but the tension in the cockpit was suffocating. Peter Lawson, the first officer, shot her a sympathetic glance, but remained silent. He knew exactly who held the power in this situation. As the final preparations were made, Olivia turned her attention to the maintenance log, a crucial part of every pre-flight check. She flipped through the checklist, scanning for any discrepancies. Then, something made her stop. The maintenance schedule for the cabin pressurization system didn't match. Her brows furrowed as she flipped back and forth between the records. The pressurization system was one of the most critical components of the aircraft. If it failed mid-flight, passengers' lives would be in danger. She pointed at the log. "Captain Blake, I see an inconsistency here. The check on the pressurization system was supposed to be done yesterday, but it's marked as completed 3 days ago." Blake didn't even bother looking up. "Maintenance signed off on it. That means it's fine." Olivia wasn't satisfied with that answer. "But if the records were falsified, how do we know the inspection actually happened?" Blake let out an exasperated sigh, clearly growing impatient. "Listen, Carter, if you're going to nitpick every little thing, we'll never take off. The plane's been cleared, we have a flight to run." Olivia knew she could push this further, but she also understood the unspoken rules in this industry. If she kept asking questions, she'd be branded as a troublemaker. She bit her lip, but in the end, she signed off on the pre-flight checklist. "All right, but I'll be reporting this after the flight." Blake shrugged. "Do whatever you want, just don't delay the schedule." The aircraft rolled toward the runway, but Olivia couldn't shake the unease gnawing at her. This wasn't the first time she'd noticed discrepancies in maintenance records, but this time it felt bigger. Someone was tampering with the logs, and if it had happened once, it had probably happened before. The plane took off, climbing steadily into the sky, but Olivia's mind remained on the ground. She needed to find out the truth before someone paid the price for these mistakes. The flight to Seattle went smoothly, but Olivia's thoughts were anything but. She couldn't ignore the pit in her stomach, the lingering questions that refused to be silenced. As soon as the plane landed and the passengers disembarked, Olivia quickly gathered her documents and exited the cockpit. In the crew lounge, she spotted Jake Turner, a maintenance technician she had met during her training. He seemed hesitant when she approached, but he gave her a small nod in acknowledgement. "Jake, I have a question," Olivia said, keeping her tone steady. "There's a discrepancy in Flight 42's maintenance log. Was the pressurization system actually checked?" Jake glanced around the room before answering. "It was supposed to be inspected yesterday, but management told us to skip it. They're pushing us to speed up turnaround times and minimize aircraft downtime." Olivia's expression hardened. "So we're flying planes that might not be safe." Jake lowered his voice. "I'm not the only one worried about this, but if I speak up too much, I'll lose my job." Before Olivia could press further, a familiar voice called from behind her. "Captain Carter?" She turned around and saw Thomas Reynolds, CEO of Regal Airlines, standing by the door. Beside him was Richard Whitmore, one of the airline's most senior captains. Neither of them bothered to hide their displeasure. Olivia straightened her posture, keeping her voice steady. "Is there a problem?" Reynolds crossed his arms. "We need to have a conversation, right now." She knew she had no choice. With a small nod, she followed them to the executive office. The air in the room was stifling the moment she stepped inside. Reynolds settled behind his desk while Whitmore leaned against the wall, arms crossed. "Captain Carter," Reynolds began, his tone measured but sharp, "we've received reports that you've been interfering with the airline's maintenance procedures. That is not your responsibility." Olivia didn't flinch. Then whose responsibility is it if a plane goes down because of a maintenance failure? Whitmore let out an exasperated sigh, as if she was making things unnecessarily difficult. "Don't blow this out of proportion, Carter. This company has been operating safely for years. You're new here. Focus on your job." Olivia met his gaze without hesitation. "My job is to keep passengers safe, and if I see something that doesn't look right, I have every right to ask questions." Reynolds leaned back in his chair, studying her for a long moment before speaking. "You're ambitious, Carter. That much is clear. But you need to understand something. This company has a system. If you want to go far, you need to learn how to play by the rules." Olivia understood the message beneath his words. This wasn't just a warning, it was a threat. But she wasn't the type to back down. She rose from her seat, her voice calm but unwavering. "I hear you loud and clear, but I won't ignore what I see." Reynolds smirked faintly. "Fine. While we conduct a review, you'll be reassigned to administrative duties." Consider it time to familiarize yourself with the culture of Regal Airlines. The words felt like a sentence. Olivia clenched her bag strap but kept her face neutral. She gave a curt nod and turned toward the door. As she stepped outside and the door clicked shut behind her, she took a deep breath. They thought they could silence her. But they were wrong. Because now, she wasn't just suspicious. She knew Regal Airlines was hiding something, and she was going to find out the truth. As Olivia stepped out of the executive office, her mind was spinning. They weren't just trying to shut her up. They wanted her out of the cockpit. She had seen too much. She couldn't let this go. But how could she expose the truth without getting fired first? Back in the crew lounge, Olivia gathered her belongings when James Parker, a young pilot she had met during training, quietly approached her. "Captain Carter," he said in a low voice, glancing around before continuing. "I heard about your meeting with Reynolds. They're trying to push you out." Olivia studied him carefully, trying to gauge if he was friend or foe. "And what do you think about that?" James lowered his voice. "I think you're right. This isn't just about discrimination. I've seen strange things happening at Regal. New pilots getting special treatment because of connections, flights being forced to take off even when the planes weren't truly ready. But no one speaks up." A spark of hope flickered inside Olivia. "Do you have proof?" James hesitated for a moment, then sighed. "Not directly, but I know someone who might." He slipped a small piece of paper into her hand, a name and a phone number. "Lauren Hayes. She's a senior flight attendant," James explained. "She's been here longer than I have, and she's seen things you wouldn't believe. I think you should talk to her." Olivia clenched the paper in her hand. "Thank you, James. I'll reach out to her." A few hours later, after leaving the airport, Olivia sat in a quiet corner of a small cafe and dialed the number. The voice on the other end was low and cautious. "Who gave you my number?" "James Parker," Olivia replied. "He said you might know about irregularities at Regal Airlines." There was a long silence. Then, finally, Lauren spoke. "I can't talk about this over the phone. Meet me in the parking lot of the Regal Hotel near the airport." 30 minutes. Olivia could hear the tension in Lauren's voice, but she knew this might be her only chance. 30 minutes later, she parked outside the hotel, scanning her surroundings before stepping out. Lauren was already there, arms crossed, her eyes sharp and wary. "I've been gathering evidence for months," Lauren said as soon as Olivia approached. "But if I speak out, I'll lose everything." "What kind of evidence?" Olivia asked. Lauren pulled out her phone, quickly scrolling through a folder before handing it to Olivia. Photos of the aircraft cabin, cracks in the fuselage, broken components, and altered maintenance reports. Olivia stared at the screen. This was exactly what she needed. "How long has this been going on?" Lauren bit her lip. "At least 6 months. I sent these pictures to internal safety management, but they told me not to worry. A week later, my schedule was suddenly changed. My hours were cut. I knew they were trying to silence me." A slow, burning anger rose inside Olivia. This wasn't just about her. This was an entire system built to suppress those who dared to speak up. She met Lauren's gaze, her voice unwavering. "I won't let this continue." Lauren exhaled heavily, then handed her a small USB drive. "Everything I have is on here, but if you go public with this, be careful. They won't let it slide." Olivia gripped the USB tightly. She knew she was walking into a dangerous fight, but now she had proof. And she wasn't stopping. The USB sat firmly in Olivia's hand as she drove home, her mind racing with 100 different possibilities. She had the evidence, but what now? Turn it over to the FAA? Leak it to the press? Confront Regal Airlines directly? She knew that if she made the wrong move, they would destroy her career before she could even speak. But she also knew that if she did nothing, Regal Airlines would continue putting thousands of lives at risk. She pulled out her phone and dialed Rachel Carter, her older sister, a top corporate and aviation lawyer. "I need your help," Olivia said as soon as Rachel picked up. Rachel's voice turned serious. "Let me guess. This has something to do with Regal Airlines." Olivia let out a dry chuckle. "You always rid my mind." "What did they do?" Olivia stared out the car window, her eyes fixed on the glowing city lights. "Cutting corners on maintenance, falsifying records, silencing pilots and crew. I have proof." Rachel was silent for a few seconds before responding. "We can't take this public just yet. We need to protect you first. I don't care about myself, Olivia shot back. I care about the people still getting on those planes, not knowing they might be unsafe. Rachel let out a heavy sigh. I know, but if we're going to take them down, we have to do it the right way. The next morning, Rachel arranged a discreet meeting between Olivia and Carl Stevenson, a senior investigator at the Federal Aviation Administration, FAA. The meeting took place in a quiet cafe near downtown, away from prying eyes. Olivia placed the USB drive on the table. This has everything, evidence of Regal Airlines cutting back on safety inspections. Stevenson picked it up, turning it between his fingers. Are you absolutely sure you want to go down this road? Once this gets out, there's no turning back. Olivia met his gaze, unwavering. I'm not looking back. I'm seeing this through. Stevenson nodded, tucking the USB into his pocket. We'll open an investigation, but be careful. If Regal finds out you're behind this, they'll do everything they can to shut you down. Olivia had already anticipated that. As soon as she stepped out of the cafe, she pulled out her phone and dialed Mark Collins, an investigative journalist from the Chicago Tribune. Collins, I have a story you're going to want to hear. She knew she couldn't keep this quiet for long. The FAA had the evidence. The press would soon follow, and Regal Airlines would not take this lying down. She didn't have to wait long. Less than 24 hours later, an email from Regal Airlines' HR department landed in her inbox. Captain Carter, you are placed on administrative leave pending review for violating company policy. Olivia almost laughed. Did they really think they could silence her that easily? But things didn't stop there. That afternoon, as Olivia was sorting through her documents, her phone buzzed. On the other end, James Parker's voice was tense. Olivia, have you seen the news? She quickly pulled up a news site on her phone. A bold headline from the Chicago Tribune flashed across the screen. Regal Airlines under fire for cutting corners on safety, endangering passengers. The article detailed the damning photos Lauren Hayes had provided, along with testimonies from anonymous employees. The FAA had officially launched an investigation. Regal Airlines immediately held a press conference where Thomas Reynolds flatly denied all accusations, calling them baseless rumors and a deliberate attempt to sabotage the company. But then Olivia froze at his next statement. We are currently investigating an internal source who has deliberately spread false information. If identified, we will take appropriate legal action. She knew exactly what that meant. Regal Airlines was coming after her. James's voice was hushed over the phone. They're going to pin this on you, Olivia. She took a deep breath, keeping her tone steady. Then we have to move faster than they do. She had been ready for this moment. Now, it was time to strike back. Sitting in her apartment, Olivia's phone buzzed constantly. Calls, texts, emails. News of Regal Airlines' scandal was spreading like wildfire. The FAA had made their investigation official, and the media wasn't letting up. But Olivia knew the battle was far from over. Regal wouldn't go down without a fight. She glanced at the USB drive Lauren had given her. Inside, it held more than just maintenance violations. It contained internal emails between Regal's top executives. Emails proving that they had knowingly ignored safety warnings from their own maintenance teams just to keep flights on schedule. If this got out, Regal Airlines wouldn't just face a fleet-wide grounding. They could face criminal charges. Olivia picked up her phone and dialed Mark Collins, the journalist from the Chicago Tribune. Collins, I have more, and you're going to want to see it. 3 days later, the storm truly hit. On the front page of the Chicago Tribune, a bold, damning headline appeared. Leaked documents reveal Regal Airlines ignored maintenance warnings, endangering passengers. The article detailed specific cases of aircraft being cleared for takeoff despite incomplete inspections, along with the immense pressure placed on employees to overlook serious technical issues. The FAA responded immediately, grounding 40% of Regal Airlines' fleet for emergency inspections. Public outrage erupted. Passengers began canceling their bookings en masse. Regal's stock plummeted, and major news outlets like CNN and NBC picked up the story. Some aviation experts openly questioned whether Regal Airlines would even survive this scandal. But Regal wasn't going down without a fight. The next day, Olivia received a letter from Regal Airlines' legal department. Captain Carter, you are being accused of violating your confidentiality agreement and leaking internal company information. The company is considering legal action against you." Olivia clenched the letter in her hand, but she felt no fear. They were desperate. She picked up her phone and called Rachel. "Regal is threatening to sue me." Rachel chuckled. "Good. That means they're panicking. They've lost control of the situation, and now they're just trying to rattle you." Olivia nodded. "So what's our next move?" Rachel was quiet for a moment before responding. "The next move is to corner them." 1 week later, the FAA issued an official statement. Regal Airlines had committed severe violations of federal aviation safety regulations. As a result, the FAA ordered a full-scale review of every single aircraft in Regal's fleet and temporarily revoked the airline's operating license. Regal Airlines was effectively grounded. Flights were canceled. The company hemorrhaged millions of dollars in just a matter of days. Then, the inevitable happened. In a tense press conference, Thomas Reynolds, CEO of Regal Airlines, announced his resignation. But the worst for Regal wasn't over yet. As the FAA continued its investigation, the Department of Justice stepped in. 3 weeks later, Reynolds and 2 other top executives were indicted on charges of federal fraud, falsifying maintenance records, and reckless endangerment of passengers. With that, Regal Airlines collapsed entirely. Most of its employees were left scrambling for jobs, but many of its skilled pilots and crew were quickly recruited by Atlantic Airways, a rival airline. Among them were James Parker and Lauren Hayes. 3 months after Regal Airlines fell, Olivia sat in a cafe near the airport, watching planes take off and land as if nothing had changed, but she knew better. Her phone buzzed with a call from Atlantic Airways. They wanted her to join them as their new aviation safety consultant. James Parker had already signed on as a first officer. Lauren Hayes had begun training to become an aviation safety inspector. Regal Airlines was gone, but the people who had stood up for passenger safety were still here. As Olivia stood up to leave, her phone vibrated again. A message from Rachel. "Congratulations, sis. Justice has finally been served." Olivia smiled. This fight was never just about her. It was about an entire industry, about the people who had the courage to speak the truth. And today, the truth had won. 3 months after Regal Airlines collapsed, the sky remained just as blue as ever. But aviation would never be the same again. At O'Hare International Airport, Olivia Carter stepped into the cockpit once again. But this time, she wasn't a pilot for an airline that covered up the truth. She was a captain for an airline that prioritized safety and integrity above all else. Atlantic Airways, the company that had acquired parts of Regal's assets, had not only welcomed Olivia, but had given her an even greater role: Chief Aviation Safety Advisor. The Boeing 787 under her command was ready for departure. Beside her in the cockpit sat James Parker, now an official first officer at Atlantic. "All systems stable, Captain," James said. His eyes filled with trust. Olivia gazed out at the runway before turning to James. "A beautiful day to fly." James smiled. "A beautiful day to do things the right way." At that moment, Olivia understood. Her journey had never been just about a single flight. It had been a battle to change a broken system, to protect the lives of millions of passengers. Passengers who would never know her name, but whose safety had been secured because she refused to stay silent. The aircraft rolled forward, gaining speed down the runway. Olivia tightened her grip on the controls, feeling the power of the engines, the power within herself. And as the plane soared into the sky, she knew she had conquered more than just the skies. She had helped pave the way for a future where safety could never be compromised, where the truth could never be silenced. And that was the most important destination of all. Olivia Carter's story is more than just about a pilot who stood up against injustice. It is a reminder that truth and justice only prevail when people are brave enough to fight for them. If this story inspired you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this one. What are your thoughts on Olivia's journey? Share them in the comments below. If you believe the truth deserves to be heard, share this video. Let's work together to make the skies and the world a fairer place. See you in the next story. Bookmark, go back.